Okay, pretty. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our fourth edition of our Sustainable Development Workshop series. Today's workshop is titled Managing Construction. This is all these workshops have been recorded and are available on Downstream Strategies YouTube channel, which we will provide at the end of this of today's workshop. So if you're interested in seeing the earlier editions, feel free to click the link and view those in the past. My name is Matt Pennington. I'm a senior planner with Downstream Strategies. We are a small consulting firm out of Morgantown, West Virginia. But we work all over the Appalachian region, specifically in Southwest Pennsylvania and in West Virginia. Joining me today is my colleague, Brendan Williams, providing technical support, as well as here to answer any questions that you may have. This workshop series is sort of an add-on from a report that we worked on with the League of Women Voters, who is sponsoring this workshop series, titled Reimagine Appalachia, which is advancing budding projects and a toolkit for estimating the economic benefits of sustainable development ideas in Southwest Pennsylvania. The series has identified a series of pathways, way stations, and obstacles that you all may encounter while you look for sustainable development projects. And so all through this series, we've been approaching this as sort of a summit sustainability with these way stations and obstacles that you may encounter. So we really are going on quite a bit of a journey throughout. And we talk about sort of climbing this mountain as a series of pitches. And for you all that might not know what that is, but a pitch is essentially the length of a rope that you would attach. So if you fall or stumble, you can catch yourself. And every pitch has a different set of scenarios that you need to be aware of and know how to navigate for successful completion to the summit of your project. We talked about one of the more famous summits in California, El Capitan, and all the different names that these pitches have along the way, and how mountain climbers really need to almost memorize this to become truly efficient at what they're doing and to be able to climb to the top. So we're introducing some of these concepts as we go along. So along the way, we went through pitch 1 through 5, which was an essential pre-development planning process. And do you have the community support? Do you have the right infrastructure for this type of sustainable development to occur? Do you have political support for these types of things? Are you in the right area that could provide the correct funding or even the market support that's needed for your sustainable development project? Pitch 6 was talked about project finance through grants, loans, and other types of bonding that a community or a nonprofit or even an entrepreneur can enter into when talking about sustainable development projects. And pitch 7 and 8 was our last one, talked about navigating bureaucracy and how to approach local, state, and federal governments through the permitting or application process of your project. Some of you might remember our former speakers, David Cayley from the Progress Fund, a great resource through the CDFIs, or Community Development Institutional or Financial Institutions. And then from to the Just Transition Fund, Rebecca and Max talking about grants and eligibility in Appalachia. Last time we were really grateful to have two of our 3 speakers to talk about navigating bureaucracy through the legal mechanisms that are, or through the actual permitting of some new industries. From Jason, who talked about his experiences getting permitting through the cannabis and marijuana industry after legislation passes in various states throughout the country. Again, all of these are on Downstream Strategies YouTube channel. The link can be found below. And I will paste that into the chat as we move forward through today's workshop, which will be on managing construction projects. And this is a very detailed and very vast topic. So we're going to hit it from sort of a 3-level, which is planning, coordination, and execution of your construction project. You know, construction dates back to prehistory, really. We're not really sure at what point we have started our first, mankind's earliest construction project. But, essentially we, as a species, evolved from a hunter-gatherer that roamed the land and basically went where the weather led us to and where we could find food and water and set up very makeshift style shelters. And that was probably our earliest construction, which was to keep weather, rain, and cold out away from us and our, whoever we were with. Agriculture really changed that as mankind started to evolve, and we were able to essentially create more food, give us more energy, which allowed us to evolve, to allow our brains to grow and our bodies to grow and become stronger. We became more efficient and so we started to build societies based off of our agricultural revolution. And one of the first was the city of Jericho, where probably one of the largest and first major construction projects occurred, with establishing walls in a city to provide safety, as well as a sort of center for commerce and trade, and everything that societies start to evolve into. And then one of our most notable was largest construction projects in history is the Great Pyramids, and how that was conducted, and the amount of resources and things that enabled to actually see this type of construction project take place. So getting back to our pitches here, and what we're going to be talking about today is, we think about construction, we talk about planning, coordination, and execution today. And in the planning stage, you look at, feasibility, and you look at design and engineering. And I love this graph that shows during that early stages, at the concept and feasibility stage is really where you have the most influence on the total project costs. And the minute you start to step away from that, those costs you have less and less control over. And when you get into the coordination of pre-construction and procurement and start spending actual dollars with, consultants, engineers, and even purchasing of materials, again, it starts to decline on how much influence you have on construction cost, but those costs start to elevate, right? As construction starts to elevate, and finally, when you get to the execution of building, and then finally, maintaining, and what those actual end costs were to the whole life cycle of the construction project. So there are many, many, many types of construction that are out there, and we're not going to be able to really dive into any one specifically. So this really is an overview, but if you can start to imagine all the different skill set that the construction industry requires, it's a very diverse skill set here, from typical traditional construction management projects in the residential housing, commercial, industrial. Maybe you're building a factory, or you're building something that's very specific to creating units for exporting out of a community, or infrastructure projects, thinking roads, bridges, wastewater treatment plants, water treatment plants, telecommunications, electricity. All of these things fall into that infrastructure. We're evolving into a little bit more specialized construction management here in 2022 as America starts to age, and we're starting to see what other types of construction industries are starting to evolve, whether it be the restoration and preservation of our historic buildings, or the redevelopment of communities that have been overlooked in the past. We're starting to see effects from climate change. We're starting to see the effects of our urbanization over the years. So environmental projects are starting to become, environmental construction is starting to see an increase in that sector. And finally, disaster recovery, and what happens when you have a major hurricane or wildfire that enters in your community, and you have to rebuild. You have to call these contractors in that know how to establish safety protocols and go into a building that potentially is on the verge of collapse from natural disaster. But the construction management is, like I said, it's a multidisciplinary approach. We look at the pure science aspect of it in terms of engineering and design and architecture, and how that evolves and is critical to overseeing a construction project. But then you get into the economic theory and the social relations and the industrial relations that are necessary for successful completion of a construction project that comes in on time and on budget. And so with economic theory, you're looking at budgetary management. Where are these costs going to come in on time? You're looking at on the social relationship and industrial relationship side. Who are my subcontractors? How am I coordinating with those individuals? How many employees are qualified to do this type of work? So managing all of these, and then also managing the public's expectations of a construction project. How long is my road going to be closed down for? How long are you going to have these excavators outside of our school making noise? When is this going to occur? So all of these that are critical for construction management. So with us today is our expert panelist, Maria Riley, who works for Riverlife in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And Maria is the project manager for a number of redevelopment style projects in Pittsburgh. And Maria is going to share with us some experiences that she's had throughout the years. And I welcome her. And Maria, please let me know if you have control of the screen and are ready to share your presentation with us.
All right, I think I am. Let me just do this. Sorry, I'm getting there. Okay. All right, can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Well, it's lovely to be here with you guys this afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. It's, I hope the presentation lives up to the build up here. So as Matt said, I'm the Riverfront Project Manager for an organization called Riverlife here in Pittsburgh. We're working on a 15-mile loop park around the riverfronts in downtown Pittsburgh. My background, I have an undergraduate degree in politics from Mount Holyoke Mount Holyoke College, and a master's in landscape architecture from the University of Virginia. Here's the University of Virginia, one of the most iconic pieces of landscape architecture designed by, Thomas Jefferson himself. My work background, when I finished graduate school, I started working for Clavon Design here in Pittsburgh, which is a very small firm that was doing, local universities, city projects. I went back to New York, which is where I grew up, and I worked for 6 years for another small landscape architecture company, Cornell Rothschild, who 90% of their work is New York City parks work. And then last year, I very happily came back to Pittsburgh, where I joined Riverlife, which is a nonprofit here in the city. So I'm gonna, I'll talk first, what a project manager does. My role is basically to oversee all aspects of the design project from concept through implementation. My roles specifically, I'm looking to make sure that the concept reflects the needs of the client, whether the client is the community, a business, whoever it is. I want my project to reflect their needs and desires. And I'm also starting to think about budget, very early on in the process, because small things can make a really huge difference. And so it's really something that gets tracked from the earliest point in the process. Design development is sort of the next stage that we go through, and I'm refining the conceptual plan, making sure things are working, relationships are working. I'm really sort of keeping an eye towards understanding what materials I'm going to be using, and again, the cost implications of all of it. So I'm building up my budget as I go along, and I'm becoming more and more refined with that as I go along. Construction documents are essentially the beginning of the bidding process. It is my time to say to a contractor, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly where I want it. And this is exactly how I want you to build it, through drawings, and through specifications, which I'll show you some of those, which are documents that give very similar information. This is the material that I want you to use. This is how I want you to build it. This is how you get paid. And again, at this point, I have developed a very, very detailed budget with specific line items, with quantities. And then during construction, I'm really looking, I'm making sure that the construction process is proceeding in a way that the quality of the work is as expected, as I specified to the contractor. I'm going to be reviewing submittals, which are documents that the contractor sends to me to say, this is the material that I'm going to use to build this bench, for instance. You know, this is where I'm going to get the material from. And I need to very carefully review every single submittal to make sure that it meets the level of the specification or the drawing that I have given them. Sometimes they don't match and I send it back and say, nope, not good enough, do it again. Sometimes they'll send something that's better than what I specified. And I say, okay, great, fantastic. But, you know, it's something that is my responsibility to make sure that it is living up to my intention, which is, you know, the best intention for the client. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned. Another thing that happens sometimes during construction, problem solving. Problems come up during construction, they just do. And so sometimes you're gonna stand there in the field with the contractor and, you know, think about, you know, how we can shift X, Y, and Z to make something work. Sometimes I have to go back to my office and look at the drawings and, you know, puzzle over them. This is too high, this is too low, how are we going to fix it? In worst case scenarios, sometimes you have to issue a change order. So let's say the contractor uncovers a giant bunker on the project, on the site that no one knew was there, right? So it's an unexpected thing that has to be dealt with in order for the project to go forward. And therefore you have to pay for it somehow. The change order says, okay, contractor, please go ahead and, you know, do what you need to do in order to move forward. So I'm going to talk about two projects that I did in New York. The first is Audubon Playground. John James Audubon, we know him for all of his bird paintings. He was a resident of the Washington Heights neighborhood, which is in the northern tip of Manhattan. So there are bird, you know, murals everywhere, and the street named after him. This is sort of looking into the site before construction. On the left here, can you see my pointer? Yeah, okay. On the left, this was a mini school that was a New York City public school system. Looking straight through the site, this is actually the playground back there, believe it or not. This building on the right is a comfort station in New York City Parks language. It's a, you know, building that has restrooms and then maintenance, storage space where mechanical equipment is kept, etc. And then off to the right here was this weird little plaza that had a couple benches, but no there. So again, this is looking at the playground. It's fantastic, don't you think? This little pole was the spray play for the kids. And this was the entrance to the school. It was a one-story building, and New York City Public Schools decided that they no longer needed it. No one knew, neither Parks nor New York City Public Schools, that Parks owned the property and owned the building. So New York City Schools said, you know, see ya, and Parks was stuck with a building in the middle of their site. So here's looking down in plan. So here's the mini school, which took up essentially half of the site. The rest of the site is park. It is considered playground. So basketball court that had no baskets, and was used by an elementary school up in this area as sort of their outdoor space because they didn't have a gym. That playground that I showed you, the comfort station, and then the plaza. Additionally, the site was sort of divided from high to low, and there was this very narrow walk with 12-foot chain link fences behind the school, which was dark during the day and obviously dangerous. So project conundrum number one, what do? We have a building all of a sudden that we need to get rid of. Well, you take the building down. So that's several $1 million, right? So they're left with a site that basically is different from what they were considering that, you know, they were going to be renovating previous. Conundrum number two on the project was the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, gave the project $3 million to daylight green infrastructure. So anything that was that we could do on the site that was visible. So rain gardens, for instance, they were going to fund this work. So the first thing that we had to do was determine if where we could infiltrate. So we dug a bunch of perk tests. We did perk tests, percolation tests, which is you dig a pit, you fill it with water, and you see how long it takes to drain. And there was zero drainage on the site. So poof, there went $3 million of our budget. Okay, so another, you know, conundrum there. So now we're starting design, and we had a large community meeting. 700 people came out, all ages, several different languages spoken, and we sort of got to understand what people wanted. You know, safety, play spaces. They want active space. They want passive uses. What we didn't foresee was that the most important thing to the community of all of it was Tommy the Turtle. Tommy the Turtle was installed probably in the 70s, and it was part of a program that New York City Parks was doing, installing these concrete animals in all the parks. And this neighborhood is largely Dominican. So they came, a lot of Dominican immigrants came in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s probably, and raised their kids there. Their kids came, you know, grew up playing with Tommy the Turtle, and now their kids lived in the neighborhood and were bringing their kids to play on Tommy the Turtle. So this was a multi-generational, very beloved hunk of concrete, you know, in some ways that became a major issue for us because they were adamant that if we got rid of this turtle, we were in trouble. You know, this was the most important thing to them, which to us, we thought, you know, well, drugs, you know, like the sewer from the comfort station was completely blocked up with hypodermic needles. No, Tommy the Turtle. So unexpected things that become big deals. So Tommy was in terrible shape. How are we going to deal with Tommy? So we'll put Tommy on the back burner. We're dealing with Tommy. So we're moving along, and this is sort of the beginning of design bubble diagrams that we do, where we say, okay, we need about this much space for this this process. We need about this much space for this activity. Are these relationships good? How do we get between activities? Does it make sense? Does everything make sense? So this was the final sort of bubble diagram that we said, okay, this seems to work. And then the final plan, sort of design development plan, which worked really well with the original bubble diagram. So once you've got the plan down, you start sort of the bid package. And I don't know if everyone has seen construction drawings, so I can go through a series of drawings if you would like, or I can sort of bypass them if you know, people have seen construction drawings and don't need to see them. So I don't know if people want to give thumbs up or thumbs down, or if I should just run through them, but.
Yeah, you could show the drawings.
Okay. All right, so one of the first things you do is you get a survey. A surveyor goes out and tells you exactly where everything is located, what's happening on the ground. What, you know, these lines, these dashed lines here are contours. What the ground is doing, what the slope is on the ground. They give you elevations. So you have a wall, how high is the top of the wall? What is the elevation at the bottom of the wall? They locate trees, they locate benches, they locate utilities, they locate everything that you need in order to proceed with the project. This is a tree protection plan. So we had a lot of old sycamores on the project that we really wanted to keep. There were a bunch of trees that we couldn't, that were basically, just the demolition of this building was going to destroy the trees, so they had to come out. But we had several really great, huge sycamores that we wanted to save. So how do you protect them? Notes, ton of notes on a project, from sort of just general information, safety information, fire safety information, material information, a lot of notes that we give to the contractor. This was the building demolition plan. So how do you take this building down? This is starting with the roof. How do you take the walls down? What happens once the building's gone? The contractor was required to compact fill the hole and compact it to a certain density, by law, I believe. And this is how you're going to do it. You're going to use this machinery. You're going to start here. You're going to wind up over here. And then, it's really very detailed drawing showing exactly what the contractor is supposed to do in order to take this building down. Details. This is a detail for the fence that goes around the site while they're taking the building down. Very specific type of fence needs to be used, specific height, specific material. It needs to be anchored in a specific way. So every single aspect of the project has to be conveyed to the contractor. So once the building was down, sort of when I take over. So this is my site demolition plan. I want these walls removed. I want these benches removed. I want the spray play, removed. I want Tommy the Turtle saved. Take up the pavement, take up asphalt, take down the basketball courts. Next is I'm telling the contractor, okay, this is what we're putting in. Every single item in the plan has to be identified, tell the contractor what it is, and lead them to somewhere where they can determine what the materials are, how it should be installed. So a detail somewhere in the construction set. And then the layout. So I'm putting in 50 benches. Where are those 50 benches going to go? It's not sort of an eyeball thing. Just shove it over there. It down to the inch. You want things located. Grading plan. This is how I want the surface of the plan to get from here at that high point to here at that low point that I showed you earlier. These are the walls that we need. I want the wall to be exactly this tall. I want the base of the wall to be exactly this tall. Every that you're installing gets an elevation, including the ground plane. And it's really important actually for accessibility purposes to understand, do I need a ramp to get from one place to another? And if I need a ramp, those are specific grades and laws that apply to that ramp. So every single, the grading is a huge part of the process. Planting schedule. What am I planting? Where am I planting it? And then details. I'm building this wall and I'm attaching this new wall to an old wall. How do I do that? I have this fence that we're installing, but there's a gap between that fence and the wall. How do we fill that gap in? Every element has its detail to tell the contractor exactly what you want them to do. More fencing and planting. How do you plant a tree? How do you put down granite pavers? And then I was working with other trades. So I was working with civil engineers, electrical engineers. So their drawings have to match up with mine. And it's really important to get team members who understand each other and who understand what the final goal is for the project. And, because the civil engineer could put an inlet in right in the middle of my granite pavers. I don't want that. You need to be working with someone who understands that, Maria's not going to like that if I have my inlet right in the middle of this precious material, right? This is their removals plan. So all the inlets that are coming out, all the pipe that's being abandoned. This is their new civil plan, all the inlets that are going in, all the new piping that's going in. Whoopsie, sorry. Water, electrical, how many lights are going in where, how are you running the electrical conduit, where are the junction boxes. So once you get all the drawings together, that's one set, you get a big stack of drawings to give to the contractor. But then the next part of it is specifications, which is another really thick book where, you know, this is 3 pages of text telling them how to pour a concrete curb. You think it's easy, you think you just pour concrete, but it's not. You know, you are using a specific concrete. You need steel rebar in some curbs. You need a footing. How are you going to protect it? How are you going to how are they specifically going to construct it? And on their end, how are they going to get paid? Is it by linear foot of curb, or is it by cubic yard of concrete that they're using? So that goes in the package as well, the bid package as well. At this point, I have a really detailed cost estimate put together down to the number of cubic yards that I think they're going to need to construct everything, and a price that we understand is fair. Eventually, we're going to send this out without cost, but give them sort of quantities to the contractor in order for them to fill in their costs and give us a total budget, their estimated budget for the project. So you send this package out to contractors. This is an invitation for bids that can go in the newspaper. It can go online. It can, you know, there are a bunch of outlets that, you know, show that disseminate, is that the right word, these invitations for bids. And then you hope to get at least 3 bids back. So we take our cost estimate, we add all of their numbers in, and we compare. So sometimes a contractor will come in, you know, approximately where we thought they were going to be. Sometimes they'll come in really low. What's going on with that? Do they understand what's happening? Or they'll come in really high. Is there something that's influencing the price of steel, for instance, that we don't know about? It's sort of a game to try to figure out what's real, what's not real. Conversations need to be had, like, why are you charging twice as much as we expected for this? So you really need to choose a contractor that might not give you the cheapest number, but really understands the project, understands how to build a project, because they really know sort of the nitty gritty details, and it gets reflected in their cost estimates. So once you choose a contractor, you get to construction. So construction is messy. It is not pretty. Think about these people living right here, looking out at this mess for, we thought it was going to be a year, it turned into 2.5, because lo and behold, COVID in the middle of construction. So they're looking at all this junk and listening to machinery and guys talking outside their window and people climbing the fencing, painting it for 2.5 years. It's not a pretty process. People don't like construction, even when they know that there's sort of a positive outcome. So here is project conundrum number 4. We were under construction. Turns out the survey was off by about 6 inches in both directions, which meant, and we were on a very tight site. I mean, it's a city block and it looks like a lot of room, but with regulations, et cetera, it was a very tight site. And luckily the contractor found it fairly early on. They had already laid a bunch of pipe. They had already installed some inlets, which they had to do a bunch of they had to do some shimmying to get things to work, and we had to issue some new drawings to make sure that, you know, grades were working properly for sanitary, for instance. So this was a huge problem that luckily we were able to solve, but sometimes problems come out of sort of random places. How is a survey wrong? It just is, you know. Tree protection. This is the tree protection that I was talking about. It's not pretty, but it works. It prevents the contractor from taking their backhoe and bumping into the side of the tree. excuse me, sometimes you have different contractors overlapping on the site. So this project was actually two projects. One was site and one was the restoration of the comfort station. So they had to manage their different sites, their different materials, their different activities within a very tight space. So how does that work? You know, that this project had another project manager for New York City Parks who was on site every day dealing with those sort of interactions and making sure that they were staying out of each other's way. Everything was coordinated. And then again, this is a really tight spot. This was actually the synthetic field, but it was also their staging area. So they have to keep their machinery somewhere. They have to park their trucks. They have to have room for the pavers to be, you know, delivered. So there's a very, it's almost like a ballet and an orchestration of how you build a site and sort of back your way out of it so that you're not rolling over your brand new granite pavers with a backhoe, for instance, to get to that site in the way back corner. You know, there's a very clear process that the contractor has to follow in order to safely and effectively construct a project. So back to conundrum number 2, we had no percolation on the site, right? And the contractor had compacted the grade in the building footprint to basically be concrete. Well, the tree pits were in the footprint of the building. So what did we do? So they brought in, before they put my precious granite pavers, if you can't tell, I love them. They brought in a backhoe and pulled out as much soil as they could with the backhoe and filled it with new good planting mix. It was fine for a while. I guess we didn't have that much rain, but we had a major storm, and lo and behold, it's still backing up. So they came in with an auger and, you know, just poured down into the subgrade as far as they could get it to sort of give a place for the water to sit. And luckily we had planted trees that don't mind wet feet. Wet feet means they can sit in damp, wet soil. They don't mind that. They won't rot if they're sitting in water. So far, so good. The trees have survived, but this would not have been okay. You know, this would have been too much for them. So eventually you reach a point where you start thinking, okay, this is looking like a park. It's not looking like a bunch of piles of dirt and rubble. Very exciting, you know, time in the process of construction. Back to Tommy the turtle. So this whole time we're trying to figure out what to do about Tommy. It turns out that one of the contractors, one of the guys on the team, was a sculptor, and he was able to repair Tommy the turtle. And we were also able to get someone to come in and do a 3D scan of the turtle. And we made a baby. So Tommy is this white one here. Tommy now has a baby, and the community was thrilled to see that they now have 2 turtles, including Tommy, the original one. And then project conundrum number 5, my nemesis, this play equipment or safety surface. So safety surface and play zones, just so you know, if any of you are thinking about doing it, are nothing to mess with. You know, those little sort of toys that you can put your 2-year-old on and they just sort of rock back and forth. You need 6 feet in all directions, clear zone, in case your child decides to launch themselves, and, you know, so that they don't hit another object. So there are crazy rules that have to deal with play equipment. So when we bought it, it was a 12-foot height that, you know, someone could jump from 12 feet. Unfortunately, we specified 10-foot height safety surface. The contractor came to install the play equipment and said, I don't think you have enough depth for the required safety surface. So the 2 options: 1, we can dig down, order new safety surface and install that, or we can cut down the play equipment to 10-foot height because we already have the 10-foot height safety surface. Well, it turns out it takes a long time to make safety surface, and it is bloody expensive. So what we wound up doing was cutting down the play equipment, reconfiguring some of it. We had to take the slide to a fabricator to have them cut it down. And $40,000 later, we now have a 10-foot height play structure. So what was that is now this. This was our final meeting on site. This is the borough manager for New York City Parks, Manhattan borough manager, and we were handing everything over to the borough saying we're done, doing a last minute punch list for the contractor, which means saying, you know, just file this off a little bit, touch up that paint, make sure that's tacked down. And this class walked by and said, can we come in? And the borough manager said, sure, come on in. So this is the first use of the park, and the kids loved it. Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to start that again. And this was 6 months later. It was even more successful. The community loves it. So it went from this empty space to, sorry, it keeps restarting, to highly used. So that's Audubon Playground. The next project I'm going to talk about is the Fountain of the Fairs, which is in Queens, and it's at Flushing Meadows Corona Park, which is the site of two World's Fairs. So 1939, the World of Tomorrow, and 1964, Peace Through Understanding. The Peace Through Understanding, there are 3 fountains here that were built in the footprint of 3 fountains at the 1939 World's Fair. This is what's left. There's one building left, which is now the Queen's Museum. This is the fountain, the Unisphere. And this is, it's a, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a structure it's called the Pavilion, that is considered a national treasure, and they're in the process of restoring it. But all the other buildings are gone. All that's left are trees and lawn, and so it's used for like makeshift soccer fields. Lots of people there barbecuing, playing soccer on the weekends in warm weather, which means there are a lot of really, really hot people in summer. Where do they go? They go to the Unisphere. So you can see, you know, all these people, the scale of this, it's an enormous pool. This was back in the day, the jets, what the jets were like. They've since done a restoration, and the jets now come up to about here, which means they are deadly, literally. They could kill someone. They throw people 20, 30 feet. So Parks has tried everything in their power to keep people out of this fountain. They've put Jersey barriers in the water. They've put fences up around the whole thing. They, for a while, just turned it off because they couldn't keep people out of it. But then they tried another option. Can we give them something so that we can say, look, just go right over there and there's water there. So they brought us in to do a master plan. This is the reflecting pool at the 1964 World's Fair. And this was the first phase, although we did a master plan for all of the fountains. The reflecting pool had gone through several renovations, but Hurricane Sandy in 2012 really wiped it out. It destroyed all the machinery, all the piping. There was no bringing this thing back. And the pools, you know, the levels are basically used by kids to play soccer and foosball, and, you know, they just sat there. So we went through, you know, the typical, you know, the conceptual design process that I showed you before, all these different schemes, how are we going to use it, came up with the final plan. So this is the Unisphere. This was the reflection garden that we decided to turn into a mist fountain. The middle smaller pool was going to turn into a theater, an outdoor theater. And the larger pool down at the bottom was going to become spray play for different ages. So one end could be for little kids, the other end could be for larger kids and adults. So precedent images, what does a fog fountain look like? What are the trees? You know, what is the goal? What is the ambience going to be like, you know, with the trees that are there? The theater can have these grass steps. The spray play can be colorful. It can be, you know, have these big arches. It can be, you can create rooms. What's the landscape going to be like beyond the trees? We wanted it to be sort of wild and woolly and not manicured. So here's the, you know, this is the final, you know, design development essentially, or conceptual design, sorry. And then we went into phase 1 of developing the fog garden. So this is what we came up with in a reference to both the World's Fairs. We kept the coping, the granite coping around the edge of the fountain. And within the coping, we made it flush. So it still looks steps. It referenced the steps, but it's a completely flat surface. So they can use it for community, you know, farmers markets or, you know, other activities. So let me go on here. So here's here is, you know, a rendering that we did. This is what it could look like. Then we go back into the construction drawings. I'm not going to show you all the construction drawings for this one, but, you know, same thing, materials and layout. The fountain itself is 320 feet long, which is 40 feet off from the length of a football field. It is 60 feet wide, which is a little more than a third the width of a football field. So it's an immense space. How do you tell the contractor how to put all those borders in? How do you, are you guys still getting, I'm getting internet is unstable, okay. How do you tell them to this, there's sort of an ombre pattern that, you know, sort of defined those rooms. How do you tell the contractor how to put that in? There are 504 fog nozzles that had to be placed precisely at 4 feet 2 and 15/16 of an inch in order to match the pavers that we had chosen in the pattern. So, you know, the crazy job, right? We were laying the pipe in so that we could have zones of fog so that we could create sort of a wave pattern at the end. There were 6 miles of high pressure stainless steel pipe that had to be laid precisely, tested to make sure it didn't leak because it was going to be encased in concrete. And once that happened, that's it. There's no taking that out and repairing something. So here they are. Here are the fog nozzles encased in concrete, and they're coming back to lay the pavers. See, fog nozzles are right in the middle of each paver. There's a mechanical structure. We didn't want to just put some, you know, concrete bunker in or, you know, a steel case. We also wanted it to be soundproof because they're noisy. So what does that bunker look like? How do you lay out the equipment inside of it? So here's the final product. This was the New York City Parks Commissioner, Mitch Silver, who loved the project. And so it became this sort of ecosystem that was really, you know, on a hot day, if you step in there, it's about 20 degrees cooler. It makes all the difference. You don't get wet because it's fog. Difference between fog and mist, it's a much smaller particle. And it was so successful that we actually had to turn them down because we were afraid people were going to run into each other. You could see behind, you know, beyond your hand. Why? And I like this video because it really shows the community using it. So I have 2 minutes. Sorry, I have like no time left. Okay, so Riverlife, we create, activate, and celebrate Pittsburgh's riverfronts. connecting people through exceptional places and experiences. We have been developing this loop for 20 years, essentially.
Yeah. Real quick, Maria, I know I don't want to rush anyone, and we did an hour, but if people want to stay, and if Maria, you're willing to continue to discuss the Loop project, please do so. Real quick, does anyone have any questions for Maria at this time?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious. At what stage does the project manager get involved in a project? Is it at the front end before the purchase? I mean, this may have been a different site because it was park, but when does the project manager who's going to carry it? Sounds like you were carrying something through from a beginning point to the very end. So where's the beginning for you or a project manager?
Yeah, it probably depends on the project. Because it was New York City Parks, they had a project manager that probably dealt with sort of the choosing of sites, the development of the decisions around which parks were going to be renovated, et cetera, or which new parks were going to go online. And my role as project manager on the design side came in from the very beginning. So we were handed the site and said, we want to put a playground in, go. And so we started from ground up, essentially. It really depends on the project.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like it's possible that depending on the project, you might have to bring a project manager in very early, even before purchase of the site to assess. I mean, does the project manager get involved in the assessment of the site in terms of its utilization for the ultimate design? That maybe is a more specific question.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can bring a project manager in before purchasing the site to help you choose a site. In some ways, that's a really good thing to do.
Great.
On a micro level of that, I'm working with friends who bought a property and they wanted to put a driveway in, and they're trying to buy 2 other properties. And I went and said, you'd have to build a bridge to get from there to your property. It's helpful to have someone there to make those decisions.
Great, thank you. I do have to run, but thank you very much. I really appreciated the complexity of this. So it raises my raises my awareness about how complex doing something like this is. So thank you, Maria. Appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Yep.
Sure. Are there any other questions?
I don't believe so, Maria. I'm looking at our participants. I think everyone has dropped off.
Chased them all away.
No. No, it was very wonderful, and thank you so much.
Do you want to continue so we have the other for people to watch this part? I'm going to have to go, but I'll stay a little bit. But if you were going to talk about this, so then we'll have it. We're recording this, and so when people go to watch it on YouTube, we'll have it. You're doing. I love your. I'm going to have to leave, but it's not because I want to. I just have something else I have to do. But I can be here for a couple minutes. So.
Yeah, Maria, if you wouldn't mind just sharing what Riverlife is working on for those folks, because the audience who will be tuning into the recordings, are Southwest Pennsylvania, and would probably love to hear about the project you're working on. So if you wouldn't mind staying, I think it would add to the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely, no problem. Yeah, I'll just go back then quickly, and are you going to edit this, or should I just continue going?
Continue going. You'll be fine.
Okay. All right. So we are the original loop that Riverlife was contemplating was sort of this dashed black line. We have expanded to this blue footprint. So we expanded further up the Allegheny and further up the Mon. And our focus is not just on the riverfront, but also creating connections back into communities. We're continuing to do more planning work. This is a project that came out of that completing the loop plan. And we are now taking it to the next level. We're talking, this is at the West End Bridge in Pittsburgh, and where it comes down on either side of the Ohio River, creating connections to the trail, the riverfront trail, but also connections back into the neighborhood to give these communities, West End and Manchester and Chateau, who have been really isolated, connections back to the rest of the city. In terms of construction, there was a dock at Allegheny Landing Park on the north shore of the Allegheny that was destroyed in 2018 by an ice flow. And we are in the process, as we speak, of restoring that dock, which involved, barges and people in the water in November. And we are just about to start developing construction documents, or design and construction documents, for Allegheny Riverfront Park, which was done in '94 and 2000 by Michael Van Valkenburg, who is an iconic, landscape architect. And this is actually one of the most important pieces of landscape architecture that's come out of this country in the last 30 years. It really changed how people thought about landscapes. This is what the park looks like today. And so we're about to start the renovation of this upper level of the park. The park is in 2 levels, one by the river, one up above. And so we're about to start the renovation of this park. This is the lower level, what it used to look like, what it looks like now. And a lot of this, well, everything about this has to do with maintenance. The bluestone, this is Pennsylvania bluestone, looks like this because maintenance basically scattered salt on it. It's salt that destroyed the stone. They drove trucks on it, which it wasn't designed for trucks, but that's the easy way to go and collect garbage and to spread the salt, is to just drive a truck over it. So this is what the result of lack of maintenance does to a project. So these are the key takeaways. There are always going to be issues. Just expect it. You never know what's underground. You never know if a tree root is going to upend your world. Just understand it's going to happen. Send out RFPs with the eye of getting the best team. A lot of people these days are sort of looking for starchitects, like the Frank Gearys of the world or something like that. Ego can kill a project. You look for a good team. That is one of the most important things in getting a project that really flows well, avoids as many pitfalls as possible. It's the team. Pay attention to the rapport between the team members. The quality of your contractor is crucial. Don't base your decision entirely on cost. Understand that your contractor is an expert in his field or her field, in their field, and treat them that way. Understand that they are giving you information that you need to know, and work with them. Don't sort of assume that they don't know what they're talking about. They are experts. If you get a good contractor, they're experts. Consider the maintenance of the final project at the very start of design. The Allegheny Riverfront Park project, we had a talk with Michael Van Valkenburg and Carol Brown, who are the landscape architect and the representative from the city who originally developed the park. And one of the questions that was asked was, what have you learned from this project? And they both said in unison 3 things: maintenance, maintenance, and maintenance. It is absolutely one of the most important things you can think of, and you should definitely plan for creating a fund to maintain your project, because a fantastic project can really go down the tubes really quickly without adequate maintenance. So that was the end. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Maria, for joining us and sharing with the group all of your incredible experiences over the years, not only in New York City, but now here in Southwest Pennsylvania and the great city of Pittsburgh. So, Brenda, do you mind if I share my screen again? Oh, I am able to do that.
Oh,
thank you. Wonderful.
Sure.
So this concludes our fourth and final sustainable development workshop. We've reached the summit, as Maria gave us some of those key takeaways, and now you're on your way to maintaining the project, the sustainable development project that you set out for. You've reached the top, but as you look out and enjoy, I think about those kids and community members enjoying the fog and enjoying the playground that you had worked on. And you sit back and you look at it, there are other summits, there are other hills to climb, there are other projects to pursue. The work is really never done. And I encourage you all to, once you finish your first project, to look out and tackle larger projects, harder projects, and continuing to challenge yourself to make your community stronger and better now and in the future. So thank you very much. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, thank you for supporting this workshop series. I'd like to thank all of our guest panelists throughout the workshop series. And also thank you to specifically to Heather Harr for guiding our sustainable development workshops. I wish you all a wonderful holiday, whatever holiday you choose to celebrate. Hopefully it's a warm one with friends and family. And look forward to seeing you all in the new year. So thank you very much and take care.
Thank you.